the pointy end. I'm Keith Sutherland. Today my guest is City of Greater Bendigo Councillor James Williams. Welcome.
Thanks, Keith, and pleased to be here. Love the change in the weather and a little bit of rain, and let's hope it remains that way.
And you coming from the farms, of course, having that rain on the weekend was wonderful. Let's hope we can get some backup. Anyway, lots of things to get through this morning. Firstly, I just want to talk about the Committee of Management Master Plan coming up for the Roslyn Park, and I believe that you're going to start promoting, looking for committee members, I dare say. So just run past what's actually going to happen in the next couple of months or where we are with that.
Absolutely, Keith. As everyone should be aware, we developed a master plan in conjunction with the community in the previous 18 months. Council have adopted that plan, so now we need to implement it. So we're looking for good people to come on to a reference committee. It is a reference committee, 5 community representatives who can help us map out the future of Roslyn Park. It is about attracting dollars and doing those things that need to happen. I think everyone comments on the beauty of the bottom of the park, and certainly with Marilyn there at the moment, it's quite a spectacle, and that it's a great meeting place. We need to work on probably more so the upper side of the park that fronts Barnard Street. There are a lot of fences there. There's a lot of closed or dark spaces. We want to open it up. We want to incorporate the lake up there. So it's an opportunity to get involved, I guess, look at the master plan, look at how we can implement that. We'd like to better integrate the Chinese area. We've closed the preschool in Roslyn Park. That will be relocated. That space will become available. We've spoken about the possibility of relocating parking so that we minimise the impact on the park. And issues like this, there are big issues there. It'll be an ongoing matter over time. Roslyn Park is key to our city's future. We see it as becoming more important as we repopulate the centre of Bendigo.
That's good, and I hope that there's no more encroachment for the late Darryl McClure.
Absolutely.
And it was great to see him get his posthumous OAM. But yeah, a bit sad. But anyway, he's not to see, but let's hope there's no more encroachment because it is a magnificent park. And I'm sure people will get on board with the committee because it is a focal point of Bendigo. And as you said, that was a point I was going to make about Marilyn being at the front of it, and it's certainly an icon, tourist attraction, and that sort of sets our city up. But another one of your pet projects has been the airport extension. And I noticed you've awarded the contract at BMD Constructions for about $12 million, and noticed that there had been a cost blowout of about $300,000 for specialist item for paving equipment. And then Councillor Leach was expressing her concern at cost overruns on what's actually happening. So perhaps if you want to clarify that for us as well.
Yeah, love to, Keith. We actually have a $1.2 billion contingency within the budget. We knew when we got the contracts that there would be variances throughout, I guess, the contracts that were presented to us. The staff, through their diligence process, actually identified that there was an issue in the way they actually form the tarmac. It requires a specialist piece of equipment that wasn't costed into the original contract, so they revisited that contract and asked that that be added. That still fits well within that contingency fund. That's a credit to our staff, and that just shows the lengths we now go to in terms of these contracts to make sure that the final contract that is presented to Council actually meets the criteria and will build what is desired. We don't need to repeat the mistakes of the past, and certainly the MEL and the cost overruns there. So it's a credit to the staff, it's a credit to everyone involved with that. Because I had to bring it to Council and we wanted to get it underway, it was a little bit of a rush. So while this came up, I guess, later in the process, again, it's that process of double checking everything and making sure we get what we need. So I very much thank the staff for that. It's not actually a blowout of the budget. We are still well within the budget. We have a large contingency. We realise with a large contract like this, issues such as weather, climate, etc. can play a big role. So we've allowed for a considerable contingency, I guess, to get this done on time.
2 points you've brought up there, the budget, and I'd like to talk about that, and also the overrun and the MEL. So we'll talk about the budget firstly. And I see that the Council have adopted, well, they're sort of almost forced to by the state government, wanting to impose a 2.5% CPI increase. And Council have been running roughly about 6% for several years now. Are you going to be able to do all the infrastructure projects, a lot of things you've got on the boil at the moment, with i.e. the pool, with you've got the bus shelter that's being built, and you can mention about that as well. But there's also the Alhambra Theatre, there's ongoing costs there to finalise that because there's still works happening there. the 2.5%, are you going to be able to keep within your means there when 6%'s been the average over the last few years?
6% may have been the average. It hasn't been the average of this council. This council's had two 6% rises, a 4.75, and its final budget will deliver a 2.5% rise. I guess things like the independent review, where we work through the savings and still are working through those issues, have created opportunities and certainly made us look a lot harder at those ongoing budgets. As this city grows, we will always be adding costs. I guess in terms of that, every time we build another suburb, every time we build another subdivision, it adds to the burdens of rates. It's also about the expectation of people within this city and part of growing jobs. Things like the airport are about future-proofing this city to allow business, I guess, and people to do that and to grow those opportunities. Bendigo's about creating opportunities. This council's about creating opportunities for people. The original cost blowout in the Mel was well prior to any of these. I guess Rod Fife may have been there, one or two councillors, but certainly it was the doing of another council. That's okay, they've learnt from that, and certainly the business case, the way they've gone about the recent builds has meant that most things have been delivered on time and on budget.
You sound like Stanley Atos, former Futures Director. He used to say that all the time. It was mentioned at his send-off last week, on time, on budget, and that probably is going to be his epitaph, I dare say. But that's not really true with what happened with the Mel, because it was way over time. It almost broke many of the businesses in the Mel. Not your fault. As you said, it was done in previous councils. Goes back a fair way. We've still got the screens that are there, not operational. I know the last two mayors on this program, Councillor Cox, Councillor Lyons, mentioned that they would look into it. Dennis, our production manager here, also mentioned that Dandenong had similar type screens. These are now operational for nowhere near the cost of $1 million to fix each screen. Now, they're still there, not operational. It would be a wonderful focal point if we can bring people back to the Mel with events like the Olympic Games coming up, like whatever else is going on, but they're still sitting there. It's a disaster and it is a cost overrun. How do we go forward with the Mel, because it's not quite what it should be?
Personally, I wouldn't fix them. I wouldn't waste my money. I think we spent enough money on the Mel.
But I believe it can be for about 150, 200,000. You can get the things operational, which is not a lot of money when you consider that they're there. And the $1 million is, I don't believe it's practical. But as I said, the last two mayors said they were going to look into it. But I'm sort of passing the baton to you to see if we can, because for not a lot of money, we can get them operational. And as I said, we need to get life back there. It's at the Moonlight Market or whatever it was called. Fabulous seeing hundreds and even probably thousands of people go through there on the nights it's on. It brings vitality back there, but with the screens at the moment, underutilised, not being utilised.
We could probably do it for $30,000. The technology's moved on, time's moved on, everyone has a phone now, everyone's connected to the world. Personally, I wouldn't do it. I think they wasted a lot of money in terms of that first one. We've learnt the lessons, and I spoke about that, and subsequent councils now do the homework a lot more efficiently. And I've spoken about that in terms of bringing things in on time, on budget, and that is, and I deliberately said that, given Stan's contribution to this city in the 10 years. I've seen some negative press about Stan, like him or hate him, he was actually very good for this city. We've brought in well over $100 million from outside sources, I guess, over the last 4 years, 10 years, in terms of these projects, and that's both state, federal and private funding. So any way you look at it, we have built, I guess, things for the future. The hospital build will be finished later this year, and that's just a great example. The Mel is in my territory. I actually think the Mel is developing. I think the trees, the shade that's coming on. I've said all along that we don't actually have to invest in the infrastructure in the Mel itself. It's about people wanting to be there. I don't think council has to do everything for everyone, and I think it's up to the, what would you say, the shop owners and the mood of the Mel as we repopulate the centre of Bendigo. And you've seen what I guess Ron Poyser spoke about, 4-storey buildings, apartment living. We've actually turned the figures around in Bendigo. We're starting to grow the CBD of Bendigo in terms of population. Roslyn Park's a big part of that. We want people back living in the middle of the city, near the infrastructure, walking to work, actually commuting that way. I think if we can get bars and cafes back in the Mel, if you go up to Queensland, they've got a brilliant Mel with double-storey.
Brisbane is just magnificent.
And Brisbane's a model I would use. I think there's huge opportunity. We talk about a cycle path joining Golden Square through to White Hills in that creek. That is a link that you can actually ride in safely with your children. You're not on the road, and you can come out at the back of the visitor centre there and just walk down the street. And I think that has huge opportunities and can attract a lot of people. We're about, I guess, instigating change and future-proofing this city. So we need to look at all those things. That's been identified in the ITLA strategy in terms of our traffic and what we need to do there. So personally, I don't think we need the screens. What has happened in Brisbane, as you talk about, is that they actually have a screen that they can move around, a mobile screen. We are building them now for about $30,000 out at a lot of the football centres in different places, and they can be operated from the computer. So technology is giving us that advantage. The fact everyone can just sit on their phone now and look at it is quite amazing in itself. So I'm not in a hurry to see that happen. Personally, it's not how I see the Mall going. I think pulling down one of the obelisks this end is a positive, and putting in some seating, some shelters, the bus shelter. We now have, and I just forget the name, but our disability group there, and that provides better access for them, better access to the Mall. Yeah, but it's about making it an inviting place. I use Federation Square as the example where they activate it through bars, cafes, people go after work. We need that sort of mentality in the Mall. I guess Killian's Walk, the redevelopment there that we approved last year, cafe upstairs, again, more specialist shops, things like that. So I think a bit of the emphasis has to come back on the traders, on also our local rules and what we allow to happen. In the night markets, we saw people being able to have a drink in the middle of the Mall there under very controlled circumstances, and I think that's a positive thing. So I'd like to see an atmosphere that grows that food culture that we have in Bendigo, and allows us to evolve into something going forward, something better for everyone.
Sounds like Stan's personality's rubbed off on you, Mr. Promotional Man for Bendigo, but rightfully so. Coming back to the Roslyn Park, the Mall, bringing vitality back to Bendigo, centre of Bendigo, and it's great. One problem we have, and it's a major problem that's been emphasised over the last few weeks, is the vandalism. We saw what was happening. We had the bikies looking after the Christmas tree. We've got Marilyn there now. Surely some idiots in this town go and do this vandalism. We saw what happened at Coimbra Park. We saw what happened out in Ellingham Street, where I think the swings and slides have been burnt about 5 times or whatever it is. $60,000 damage to Coimbra Park. All these CCTV cameras around. What are we doing about that? Because Marilyn, you know, it's not ours, it's on loan from America, so we've got to make sure we're looking after it. But the camera's going to be the answer, because once some idiot gets in and starts to damage it, by the time security, police get there, I've seen it because I was at a party one night opposite the Christmas tree, seeing these so-called idiot Sanders climbing up and pulling all the baubles off. So it takes a while for security, police to get there. How do we identify, how do we improve that? By bringing more and more alcohol back to the centre of the city, and I agree with you in the Mall, but the vandalism is just getting out of control in the city.
Look, it's always the culture, Keith, isn't it? And I'm no less disappointed than you. What happened at Coimbra Park is just an absolute disgrace. We seem to have another one out at Kangaroo Flat that gets vandalised quite regularly. We've had a little bit of a discussion around CCT, and it has now become more accessible, again, because of the technology, because of the way we can link it up. Cheaper, more effective, etc. It is a problem, but it comes down to probably a handful of people, and that is really disappointing. And that's around the culture of those people, I guess, and just getting the understanding that it's their asset as well. You know, I think people look at it and say, oh, you know, council again. Well, it's everyone's asset, and we need to be proud of what we've got. So it's changing that culture, and that's what I talk about with the Mall. I've been consistent with my message around the Mall from day one when I got on council, that growing the Mall is about growing people and putting people back in the CBD and back in that area, living, I guess, in apartments and that. And I stick to that theme. I believe it can happen. So I don't particularly like the nightclub culture, but it's there. We have to address it. What we need is people to act responsibly and put the emphasis back on those individuals. I hope they get caught. I mean,
I do too, because I don't think it's actually the nightclub. The nightclubs are there, and sure, they shouldn't be open till 5 a.m, my personal opinion. And you've seen what happened in Newcastle. The crime rate dropped down by 35% when it was lockouts and all these other things, and they were closed at 3 a.m. I think that's plenty of time. Anyway, the second final point I want to ask you is we had Jason Clare on this program last week in town, Shadow Minister. Oh, fantastic beautiful response we've had to the NBN, the rollout, lots of discussion about that. And I notice you've got a bugbear with what's happening in the Raywood area. The other problem, I went to the forum, and I have never seen so many disgruntled people with the actual rollout, the slow speeds. We had people in tears from Strathwellsay. We've got the tower out there at Turleen. I know VCAT went against the planning decision to put it up, but then there was no repeater station. We've got the tower ready to go. It's not operational. People are blaming Telstra. It's not Telstra's fault. The NBN rollout, and we are the poor relation to Ballarat and Shepparton, because I'm already hearing of businesses going to Ballarat in preference to Bendigo because we're going to get fibre to the node. I'm not going to argue about the technology, but it's something that you're concerned about for your constituents out at Raywood Way for the NBN. What's the answer? What do you see, and what do they tell you the problem out that way?
Oh look, Raywood's actually had a tower built and will become operational. It's a radio tower halfway along the Oldmore Raywood Road, so that's an attempt by them to fill in the gaps. I'm concerned for all of Bendigo. I totally agree. I think from a business perspective it's an absolute joke. This is a major city and it should have been rolled out sooner.
Absolutely.
Council have been totally supportive of it happening, and it's a bit like the airport. Some things are just left a little bit too long in terms of, I guess, enabling the future and enabling people to do business in here. I've got friends in New Zealand who run an architect business worldwide from New Zealand and fly in, fly out, do it from home in rural New Zealand. You know, we should be able to do business with the rest of the world from home in Bendigo. The sooner it happens, the better. It's frustrating for everyone. And, you know, it's not just the rural areas, it's the whole city itself and that. So the sooner it happens, the better. Council is certainly well aware of the issues and a push in regards to this issue. We need it sooner rather than later.
Just on that point, Lisa Chester is going to bring up the discussions from this week in Parliament this week, which is fabulous. Now, the $64 question. Election's coming up later this year. Councillor James Williams, is he putting his hand up? I know you were a bit keen earlier on to be mayor, but are you going to put your hat in the ring at this stage or is it too early, like most of them tell me at this point in time? And the only one we know of that's not standing is Lisa Raphael. So what's Councillor James Williams going to do?
As it gets closer to the day, Keith, I will make my decision. The closer it gets, the more I think I possibly will re-stand in that. I had a couple of other roles I played with both the state and on the catchment board. I no longer do, so council is my single role at the moment. I have got some other business interests which I'm just trying to weigh up with council, but they complement what I do on council. So at this stage, yes, I probably will be standing, but I reserve my right.
Sounds like a typical politician's answer, but yeah, experienced people like yourself would be lost, and I think that it'd be great to have some new blood in there as well. There's no question about that. But by the same token, some experienced operators. I know you've only been there 3 and a bit years, but the same thing is you've made an impact, so I'd hate to see you go. But anyway, I guess you've got to weigh up that decision come later this year when the ballot papers go out at that point in time, I dare say, or just before that, of course.
Well, thank you, Keith. I really have enjoyed my time on council. It's been challenging. It is a big council. It demands time. It demands a lot of reading. I was a councillor many years ago in the Huntley Council. Totally different, but the links, the people you meet, your friends you make statewide, and certainly my roles with Catchment Management Authority and government have been ongoing through that 30 years. So that's all very important, I guess, in the role as a councillor. And this is now a big city. The budget is around 200 million now, and it needs serious consideration. There are a lot of skills required to be a councillor, and it can be very challenging. But on the whole, I enjoy it. It's about helping people.
Well, James, thank you for appearing on the Pointy End today. I wish you well with your deliberations and good luck. So thank you for being on the program.
Thanks, guys.